tnwildlife.org is your direct link to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Log on for the latest information about hunting, fishing, boating, or wildlife watching right here in our state. You can purchase a license to hunt, fish, or register your boat right online. Check it out today at tnwildlife.org. On this episode of Tennessee Outdoor Journal, biologists from across the country attend the National Whitenose Syndrome Workshop in Nashville. TWRA gives a showcase for Tennessee's wildlife at the Dickson County Fair. TWRA crews set stake beds on Percy Priest Lake that provide habitat for many species of fish. Watch Scott and Austin as they have an awesome turkey hunt on Cheatham Wildlife Management Area. TWRA boating officers are keeping the lake safe, checking boaters for life jackets, and making sure everyone is abiding by the laws. Learn about Hunter Ed instructor training and how important it is to keeping the Hunter Education program successful. Next, TWRA is banding wood ducks to get a good population estimate of resident ducks before they migrate. Tennessee Outdoor Journal is opening the cover and inviting you in for a behind-the-scenes look at the work being done every day by your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Let's turn the page. What kind of legacy will we leave when our days upon this earth are gone? Tell me who will carry on this work that we've begun, care enough to be the keeper of the dream. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Tennessee Outdoor Journal. We opened today's show with a National Bat Conference.
We've got biologists and researchers from across the country attending the National Whitenose Syndrome Workshop in downtown Nashville.
Because bats are relatively unseen by most people, they don't realize how devastating white nose syndrome is. It is arguably one of the worst wildlife diseases in our recorded history.
It was discovered in 2007, but it wasn't until 2008 when the state agency, the New York DEC, really was able to determine that this was not just a localized freak mortality incident. In 2008, white nose syndrome was detected in western New England and in Pennsylvania, and that's when we really realized that, as quickly as it was spreading, that this was not just an isolated incident, that this was going to be a significant wildlife health issue.
Researchers in New York State started to notice that their small bat species, namely little brown myotis, had a white growth on their nose. They started taking photographs of it, and very shortly after, their bat colonies really started to collapse. The causative agent of white nose syndrome is this exotic fungus, likely from Europe or Asia, that depletes the bats during their hibernation. It's a cold-loving fungus, so it starts to actually feed upon the bat tissues. It irritates the bats, and then they go through multiple immunological responses, and ultimately they use up all of their fat reserves well before they can actually safely exit the caves and mines where they spend the winter. They can come out and the temperatures can be so low that they actually die of exposure. The other factor is that when they come out of hibernation, there's absolutely no food for them.
When it first came here to Tennessee, white nose syndrome, we started seeing similar declines, but they didn't happen as quick as they did in the Northeast. It was slow to happen in some parts of the state compared to other parts, so it was slow to see those declines, and kind of gave us a little bit of hope that maybe we had some bats that may hold on and survive this outbreak. We've since seen the declines to continue in areas, but we also see some stabilization in the numbers. The numbers haven't declined as quick or as fast as other places in the state.
One of the successes of the white nose syndrome response has been the collaborative nature that we have been able to foster across not just the research community, academics and folks from universities, but also state and federal agencies, non-government organizations, international organizations, conservation organizations, and that has proven to be really critical in addressing an issue like this, because there are obviously lots of challenges involved with responding to white-nose syndrome, and lots of expertise and lots of regulatory aspects that no single group or small group can address.
We bring the disease experts and all those field people together, and hopefully it spawns new ideas and gets people connected to the point where we can really collaborate, because it's going to take that type of collaboration if we're going to be able to fight this disease. We have had breakthroughs. The difficulty is scaling those breakthroughs up to the point where it can be meaningful on a population level.
When it comes to killing fungi, if you think about things like nail fungi or athlete's foot that people suffer with, these are very difficult cells or difficult organisms to eradicate. And so anybody who's had athlete's foot knows that it requires generally continued application of an antifungal product for weeks, sometimes even months. Now with white-nose syndrome, the fungus, we call it PD for short, infects bats, and these are wild animals that have a wild distribution. They're not in cages, they're not in zoos. We cannot treat them on a regular basis, and so to try to treat individual wild animals is very difficult. And now that the fungus is in the environment, it exists in caves and mines off of bats and can actually survive just in the cave soils. And so what we're talking about, if we're trying to eradicate the fungus from the environment, is a huge problem, because we just are not able to isolate the fungus to target it with any kind of antifungals.
We have treatments that involve orange oil, mushroom alcohol, volatiles that are derived from fungi that live in Bolivian pineapples. We have all these compounds, but getting them to the place where they can safely treat bats and also not harm our natural environment is a huge challenge.
We have been referring to this as a national response because we were really trying to get state agencies and researchers and federal agencies involved well outside the extent of the known area where the fungus was affecting bats. Because in a situation like this, the bats are spreading the fungus. We have the potential for people to spread the fungus in great distances, and we really wanted folks outside of the known distribution of the fungus to be prepared to create response plans, to do baseline monitoring for bat populations, to do surveillance, engage in surveillance for the fungal pathogen, and really be prepared for the imminent arrival of the fungus, whether actually that imminence means the next year or 10 years down the road. It's really important that people be aware that this is coming, that they collect information, they be vigilant, and they work with the public to try to reduce the potential for human-mediated spread or the arrival of the fungus in a state or in a province that wouldn't otherwise happen except for bat-to-bat transmission.
When it arrived, it was completely new, and we've really worked hard to try to figure out first what this fungus was, what it's actually doing to our bats, why our bats are behaving differently, why they're actually dying in the winter. We've come a long way, still have a long way to go.
Hey, let's visit TWRA at the fair.
Right now we're at the Dickson County Fair booth. It actually was a 4-year process. We started off in a real small building. This actually was a bathroom and showers. The building itself was built in 1949. It's one of the first buildings that was on the fairgrounds. They were originally going to tear it down. How are y'all? Myself and the Montgomery County officer, Jeremy Odom, we've kind of worked this fair together for several years, and we talked about it and said, well, we could probably utilize this. I mean, it's a good space. We can, if we do the work, it could be a wonderful asset.
No, they will bite your finger off.
Each year we've added a little bit. First year we added in a turtle exhibit, a wetland scene. Then we added in a quail exhibit. And this year we did a facade, the barn facade, so it doesn't look like a brick building. What this booth is a representation of what wildlife we have here in Tennessee, as well as we have officers on site to answer questions or give out the knowledge that we have as officers for wildlife or other things of that nature.
I like what they've done. It's something different. You get to come in. It's not something everybody gets to see. I like it.
Wildlife officers in general always have contact with the general public, but this is unique in the sense that we are here to answer questions. that guy who thinks about a question but maybe doesn't know our number or know who to talk to. We could either get them in touch with the people that they need to talk to or answer the question ourselves. Thursday of the fair every year, we have every fourth grader in Dickson County come, and we do a brief description of who the agency is and what we do, and these are the wildlife that are native to Tennessee, and we try to impart that to them. Here, these people are enjoying being around wildlife and enjoying the information that we're giving them. They just see that the kids' eyes light up and say, well, look at this turtle, oh my gosh, it's so big. Or general knowledge that as officers, we take for granted that someone may not know. They take that and we answer just simple questions, and it blows their minds that, well, I didn't know that. I really enjoy being able to talk to the general public in a real relaxed setting, getting to teach them something and impart what knowledge I have to them.
Next up, Percy Priest, stake beds.
We're on Percy Priest Lake today, and we're redoing some of our stake beds. We're a four-man crew. Ted Alferman, Wade Byford, Tommy McCormick, we're all out here today. It's a big job. We'll generally do the lower end one year and the upper end the next year, and just mainly because we've had so many. We've got over 100 stake beds that we maintain. We used to drive all of our stakes with a 3-pound sledgehammer, and it would just wear us out. I mean, after a week of that. But now we've got where we use a pneumatic hammer and an air compressor, and we've made us a special bit to fit on those wood stakes so we can drive those stakes with a whole lot less wear and tear on personnel, and a lot safer. You know, all of our reservoirs are aging, you know, either 40, 50 plus years old our reservoirs are. So all the natural habitat that was there when these lakes were impounded is rotted away and is gone. So, you know, if we didn't put something out there, they would just be almost like a desert out there, no structure for fish to, you know, congregate around. And all fish they like to orient towards some type of structure. When we first started building these stake beds, usually if they were 10 by 10, that would have been a big stake bed. But just because these air hammers make it easier to drive stakes, we can make some really super stake beds.
We picked up, just in the past couple weeks, we've picked up over 130 tires just in the Stewart's Creek area, and there's a lot more all throughout the lake that we can pick up. Percy Priest has a lot of trash on the lake, and so we're just trying to do our part to clean it up and make it more appealing for the public.
As that water level comes up and covers those stake beds good, yeah, fish will be in there. They'll be attracted to them just in a few days. And all of our stake beds we mark with PVC pipe and one of our agency stickers on it. A lot of times these guys, they'll have their favorite stake beds, and some of them even put out their own stake beds, but they don't mark theirs. Sometimes there's some steel fence posts and stuff driven out there, and those can be kind of dangerous, especially if you got a nice boat and run up on a steel fence post drove into the ground. But yeah, we don't recommend anything like a steel fence post.
There's people out here really coming out in big numbers. You know, the water temperature's getting up in the low 60s. People are starting to catch crappie. We saw people out here fishing some of the stake beds that we had put out in the past, which is great. You know, the whole point of doing the stake beds is to make fishing better and help people catch more fish. That's why we do our jobs, and we love to come out here and see people catch fish. That gets our blood boiling, gets us fired up. So.
Hey, let's go on a youth turkey hunt at Cheatham Wildlife Management Area.
I've only been turkey hunting for probably, I guess, 8 years now. I started a little bit later. My father never got me into it. This is my first time ever taking a youth out turkey hunting. I've always wanted to, I just never had the opportunity. And, I heard about Austin needed somebody to take, and I figured I'd be there, so I knew we could get it done.
They're right over there. There's a gobbler. Let's hope that turkey skirts around that and comes up here. Like I said, this is one of their spots, a strut, so they want to come here. gobble right after my call. That's a good sign, okay? So listen real careful.
Everybody said it's so hard, and it's the hardest one to hunt, and I figure, all right, I'll get a little older and I'll go try it when I'm a little more mature. And then we come down here and we got in the blind. We had some hunters walk down the ridge right there on us, and we started hearing some gobbles up the holler here.
We heard some gobbles, but they were a little late, but they seemed to be down in the bottom, just far away. And you know, as a turkey hunter, most people would understand that if you don't hear a bird pretty close, your motivation and your excitement's pretty down in the dumps. It's not like deer hunting when you just get lucky and hopefully a deer walks by. If you don't hear those birds, there might not be one around. You know, usually they're gobbling, they're communicating.
I kind of understood because I've been watching like the outdoorsman TV a lot, just watching on how they do it and stuff. I've been trying to watch that kind of stuff.
Well, to me, I've only been on with TWRA for just about a year now, and you know, going through interview processes and whatnot, I've always stated numerous times that the youth and our future generation is the #1 thing to our natural resources. You know, you could manage them, you can protect them, but in the end, we need youth to get out there and continue to harvest these animals and manage them. Future generations are definitely the #1 thing for our natural resources. I love photography, I love videography. I've had that camera for years now, and I don't have that many opportunities to take it out and film other people. I try to do some filming on my own, but it's hard, it's difficult, and like you say, I was hunting with the camera. And I'm glad Austin got to experience the fact that, you know, we're battling the wind, we're battling the fact that we're just not hearing them, at least close. And there's a chance we weren't gonna see anything this morning, but just being patient and waiting, we heard something coming, and it could have been a deer, but it was in fact a big tom.
Let him come into your shoot.
When that turkey was just down the hill,
Seen this one right over there by the dirt mounds, and he finally came out.
Austin was calm. He was very calm, but once that turkey came up on this pipeline, I never seen someone shake so bad. He was shaking like a leaf, but I give him so much, you know, he did really well, because when that turkey was to his left, he could have killed him. He could have shot him all day long, but he was patient. He waited for that bird to come right in front of us.
Put it right below his neck.
Okay.
When you're ready, you kill that turkey. Wait.
I gotta take the safety off.
Yeah, just focus on him, don't look at me.
I will say that his gun was up for a good 3 minutes, and that whole 3 minutes he was shaking like a leaf.
Just be still, just breathe slow. Take your time. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him.
He made a great shot. I was a little nervous when he finally was going to pull that trigger. He was pretty shaky, but you know, like I said, he persevered and he made a great shot, and that turkey hit the floor, and he didn't move. So it really, truly, as a turkey hunter, it doesn't get any better than that right there.
I'm a turkey hunter now for life. Everybody should try this.
In this next story, we learn how TWRA is keeping the lake safe.
The agency's main objective is safety, making sure everyone's trying to be safe and to save lives out here. That's a broad term, but everything from compliance to skiing regulations, flotation devices, PFDs, of course use of alcohol, reckless operation, just trying to keep people from getting hurt.
You've got to have some sort of buoyant vest, whether it be a life jacket or a ski belt or something of that nature. They've got to have it on. Now, if it's not a Coast Guard approved life jacket that they're wearing while being towed, there has got to be a Coast Guard approved life jacket on that vessel for that said person.
And if they're being towed by any kind of on-any device, they're required to have a life jacket.
We're renting this boat.
Renting a boat? Yeah, did they not explain that?
No, the only thing they told us is that anybody under the age of 12 had to have life jackets on while we were.
Just not knowing the laws or not being familiar with boats and being on the water is really one of the main things. We're going to write you a warning, no court action. Then that leads to different things from registration violations to PFD violations, whether their kids are not wearing their life jackets like they're supposed to.
Yeah, most of the issues that we run into on the lake, it's people that just didn't know any better, and that's getting a little bit better now that we have that mandatory boater education. Anybody that was born before 1989 is exempt, but you know, that's what, 25 years old now, so there's a lot more people out here that have to go through it. It has helped out quite a bit, but it's just most of the stuff we're dealing with, it's just safety violations that they didn't know any better. And that's what we're out here trying to do, is to make sure that they know and don't do it anymore. Trying to keep folks safe.
If boats are 16 feet or longer, you've got to have the throw cushion or the ring. Some people don't realize that. You know, if their boat's 17 foot and they didn't realize they needed it. If you have tanks that are not exposed, if they're built into the boat, they've got to have a fire extinguisher on board. And so some people don't always realize that. And like I said, we understand. We do what we can to help people out, cut them breaks, where we can, ride them warnings. But usually we try to address it some way or the other.
Want an ice cream? What do y'all say? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's for wearing your life jacket. Thank y'all for wearing your life jacket. All right, guys.
You account for as many people that's out here on a given day, and luckily, no more injuries and fatalities than we actually do have. I mean, they're safe, but you have to try to be safe.
Alcohol and boating and being on the waters definitely goes hand in hand. You've got to keep a sober driver. You can technically have an open container. You can be consuming alcohol while you're driving a boat, but you cannot be impaired. The point that you're impaired that's when we have a problem. And we do run into those that are borderline, but our main goal is to get impaired boaters off the water. That's pretty much all we do is educate people. Sometimes that requires a citation, but ultimately at the end of the day, we're out here to make sure everybody's having a safe time and abiding by the laws.
Up next, Hunter Ed Instructor Training.
So today we're at the Tennessee Fire and Code Academy in Bell Buckle, and we're doing the volunteer Hunter Education Instructor Workshop that we do once a year. Most of the people get involved in this just because they had a son or a grandson that went through the program and thought, wow, this is a really neat program. How do I become involved? And most of our instructors, we kind of make contact with them at a course that we're doing or a Hunter Education course we're doing, and then swap some information, and next thing you know, we sign them up for the next year's workshop and see them down here. The whole Hunter Education program would cease to exist if not for these volunteers, because there's no way agency employees could ever keep up with the demand for all the kids that need to be trained. So it's critical for the program to have these volunteers, otherwise we would not be able to have near the classes, which means the kids aren't getting trained. So without them basically giving up a weekend of their own time, they don't get paid for this. Kudos to them for really, having the drive to want to give up their own time in a weekend to become qualified. And then that's just the beginning. From then they have to, when they start training, they're giving their time again to do a class, which sometimes may mean 3 to 4 hours a day for a week, to get a full class in, or at least a full weekend. Yes, this right here, the workshop, is critical to continuing the Hunter Education program, which is mandated by law, so all kids have to have it. So in '85 is when it became law in Tennessee, and then that's when they established the if you were born after January 1st of '69. Seems like we do about 12 to 15,000 a year is an average, so you can figure how many years it's been since '85 to now and come up with a pretty good rough figure of how many we've done. I would like to reiterate that without these volunteer instructors, we would not be able to conduct these hunter safety programs, because In the counties, especially once you get a little further away from Nashville, the county officer is involved in most classes, but there's no way that that county officer can teach all the kids and all the programs that need to be done. So without them, we would not be pushing these kids through and getting them certified.
We'll finish off today's episode with a field trip where we go duck banding.
This is something we do for the Wildlife Division in the Nashville office.
So you set it up and you start baiting for several days. And then once you get them used to swimming through this throat right here, then you shut your lid and they can't fly back out and you start catching them. I guess you could compare it to like a fish basket style trap where when they swim in, they can't find that gap leading back out.
We get the ducks and we just determine if they were a hatch year, which means they were hatched this past spring, or they're an adult.
Number 56, and it's a male.
He's got the male chin strap, and we also look at their feathers, how the hide's got that straight white edge. Females will have like a teardrop. Primarily all we're gonna get is the juveniles because they're flocking up. You know, once they hatch out, one adult breeding pair will have anywhere from 6 to 8 juveniles, so they've just quadrupled the population of the juveniles. So that's why we typically get more juveniles than adults. You can see the difference on how this got that what they call a teardrop, and this one's it's almost more even across there. And another characteristic, how the male's got the chin straps there. The females usually have almost like a white around the eye. And he's also developing color in his bill. They'll get the color where the females will be a little more drab, darker color on the bill. The wood ducks, they're the only waterfowl that's a natural resident to Tennessee. So we ban these this early, that way we can get a good population estimate on our resident wood ducks before they migrate.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Tennessee Outdoor Journal. We'll see you next time. Tennessee Outdoor Journal is produced by your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency.
Tell me who will carry on this work that we've begun. Care enough to be the keeper of the dream. This legacy.
Hi, I'm Charlie Daniels. When I was a kid, I loved baseball and football and all kind of stuff, but my favorite pastime was when my daddy would get me up early in the morning, we'd go hunting or fishing. Out in the fresh air on the water or back in the woods, and you learn a lot. You got kids, take them hunting, take them fishing. Join me, buy a hunting or fishing license. Let's keep wildlife in Tennessee. That's a doggone good thing.
Buy your license today at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.